Hello, Jordan and Luca of
Hello.
Jordan and Luca. Thank you for having us in your studio today for a very special re-see of your Autumn/Winter 24
Thanks for coming.
collection.
Good to see you.
So you're about a month until your next show.
Please don't say that.
I want to know, when you finished a collection, do you sit on it or are you on to the next?
I think we're very different, me and Jordan, because, for example, I think Jordan get really excited about the shows. It's not that I don't get excited about the show, but for me, are a bit boring shows. For me, the job is done, you know, because what excites me is making the garments. For me, it's the preparation of the collection that really excites me, rather than the actual show itself. So when I'm in Milan, for me, it's a bit like game over. You know, when I look at the clothes in the showroom, when we do the styling, I'm already not thinking of the new one, but I'm already bored of them. I've seen them too long already. I know everything about them. I know every single piece of them. I know every stitch that they have. And you know, and it is exciting, but at the same time, my head is already somewhere else.
For me, you know, I'm really drawn to the kind of mania and the frenzy of fashion. And fashion as an event.
Right.
Fashion as something that's physical. Fashion as something that happens. So more sociological, I guess.
It's dynamic.
It's more dynamic. It's the thing that brings. It's one of the things that brings people and culture and society together. It's the first. I always talk about this. You know, it's the first industry to because of the timing of fashion. It's the first industry to kind of telegraph what the future is.
Right.
So I think it's an interesting event when you've got a fashion show that is talking about this already because you have to be ahead. It's already in the future.
I always gotta be depressed after every show. But then, as soon as I start thinking of the new one, that's when everything gets starting to switch on again. So it's a very interesting moment, the post show.
Last year was so intense for us, but we had this amazing show. I think the best show that we've done, if I say so. You know, I'm really happy with the results of it and the feedback and everything. But we were just so tired. You know, winter show to summer show, you've got a much shorter season, so it's 5 months. And I think we just needed more time to rest and to try and figure out who we were, and you know, because our collections are always self-referential, so we need to figure out who we are at that point to try and springboard from the collection. You know, we don't design from, I mean, a few artistic references and bits of literature can help us to help us to inform what the collections are going to be, but ultimately the collections are always about us.
But also because we learn something as well doing this for a few seasons now. That, for example, one of the most danger that you have after the collection that you just presented is you hear so many feedbacks. You read so many things for the press, and you hear so many feedbacks from buyers during the selling campaign. And I think that to start very early on a collection, you make a big mistake because you're going to be so polluted by all these feedbacks. You know, the silhouette was too skinny and stuff like that. So you feel like, oh my God, I need to do an oversized silhouette now. When actually, if you wait a bit more, you can really get free from what you heard, and then you go back to why you started everything, and you say, no, wait a second, it is skinny because this is what I like. So to actually wait a tiny bit more, I think brought us better result in terms of what we want to give to people and not what we think we should do. Right. Because people want to see that from us.
When people write about Jordan Luca, I think they love to talk about how you pull from subcultures, goth, ravers, punks. What were the references you were thinking about looking at? What was on the mood board?
I think the mood board, especially for this collection, was, I guess, the culture of working, of commerce. I think especially from an Italian perspective, looking at the UK, looking at, you know, we talked about kind of codes, sartorial codes, the kind of city look, that kind of city banker look a little bit, especially with some of the suiting and some of the structuring of the suiting. A lot of the subcultural, the more kind of subcultural references, what we know as more kind of more subcultural, the, you know, punk, the rave, that stuff, came through more in the hair. You know, we work with Anthony Turner now for 3 or 4 seasons, and I think it's been an interesting relationship to finally start to see that blossoming into something, and allowing the clothes to do one thing and allowing the hair and the makeup to do another thing, and then you create this clash between those two things.
of course, punk is always something very important, at least for me, because I grew up with the idea that there's nothing better in the world than punk, and the most good-looking people are the punk people. But I love the idea, not the idea. I love the reality of how punk evolved as well. And after I worked for Vivian so many years as well, like I could really see as well what she meant. And yes, punk started with lots of broken things and safety pins and chain and stuff like that. But then, what is punk today for me is much more interesting. And I really believe that today to wear a black suit beautifully tailored is the most punk statement you can do in a sea of grey tracksuit.
What's it like being a duo, and would you define your working relationship as tension?
It is about tension, and something that I think it's something that we don't shy away from, and I think many people try to pretend that it's a kind of harmony, or maybe it is, and I hope for them that it is, but between us, we live together, we have a life together outside of working, but obviously when we're at work, we're focused very much on the same, it takes so corporate, but on the kind of Northern Star, but we're very, very different people, especially I realise as I'm getting older, and we're getting older, our interests are kind of starting to split further and further apart. But actually, what that does, it kind of enriches what we're doing, because we both want the same thing. So, so I think there is a clash. But I think
we argue a lot.
We do argue a lot.
We try not to argue in front of the team because we don't want to put them in awkward situation. That sometimes happens. That they have to choose between me and him. But other than that, it's good. We managed to really separate the two things. Sometimes we really manage to go home and don't talk about this. And
well, I think the best partnerships challenge each other and their point of views.
Well, I don't know how you would go by yourself. That's my bottom line of everything. I think it's such a tough job, and I think the reality of when you say, okay, I'm gonna have a brand one day, and I'm gonna be a designer, and you think you're gonna be sitting there all day sketching with Pantone illustration, of pretty dresses, when actually I don't think the reality is that. I think it's very tough, and when you start having a business and you start having people and you start having responsibility, that's what takes 95% of what we're doing.
It really is that. I mean, the design part, the fittings part is a couple of hours every week, and that's not every week throughout the whole season. It's every week for 2 months maybe, and that's for 2 hours, and that's really the design part, and everything else is just admin. It's not as kind of fluffy as people think it is, not as frivolous as people think it is. There's a lot of heavy lifting, and it's not an easy job to do, because it's not an easy job to do. But it's
addictive. That's the problem of fashion. That is the ultimate fucking problem, because it's very super addictive. You sometimes think, why I'm doing all this. Why
the crumbs that you get sometimes from Fashion Week is enough to see you through to the next show.
Yeah, exactly. So,
and what is that? Is that just adrenaline? Is it the creating?
It's like a curse. It's a creative curse, and I don't see myself doing anything else. And
I think it's a curse for sure. It's something that you cannot not do.
It's a blessing, and it's a blessing.
Yeah,
also. It's a blessing,
and because sometimes when I have some ideas, I get so into in my head that I made myself headache. And I have to really sit and just rest a second, because maybe I thought too much about that shoulder. And I wish I wouldn't have to go through that. But at the same time, I can't not go through that.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I think it's the power of fashion, because I think you feel that you can change something in people. And something that your message can be much bigger and can go in place that you would never expect. We just came out from this crazy viral moment of those peace jeans, and to see where they went, it's incredible for us to see the power, and somehow how in a week we felt connected with the rest of the world. For 1 week the world was very small.
How has the virality felt? Are we over it? Is it a flash in the pan?
It just keeps coming. No, it keeps coming. And I think it's safe to say, and I hate to say this, but I think it kind of broke a little bit the internet, if I say so. I mean, but even impressions-wise, I'm shocked at the impressions. It's like
you were all over the Daily Mail. You were on
5 billion impressions.
morning TV.
It's nuts.
That's right.
What cousins, distant cousins, second cousins writing to me from overseas. It's been on chat shows. It's been on the news. It's been on radio. It's gone nuts.
I think the conversation that the virality created is the most interesting part of it. The fact that we managed to have his fashion story and people talking.
To start discourse.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
And the question around commerce, but also the question around taste. Which one is more important? The question around why would you charge it, but also the question around why would you do it.
Right.
It's really interesting that now, maybe politically, socially, culturally, that it's been picked up now and it's become such a big thing. I think that's more telling about where we're at as a society. Not really about the genes, not really about the piss, but where we're at as society at large to be able to question it now, 18 months later.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm fascinated by the kind of sociological element to fashion, because you get something like this and it becomes a phenomenon. How 18 months later? Mm-hmm. It's so interesting to me.
Do you ever set out to provoke, like when you were?
Of course.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can't. I mean,
sure, but when you were, so you have to understand that in the case of the jeans, we did them like nearly 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And they were there all the time. And of course it was a provocation. I mean, we had the concept of the fetishism and the consumerism. That was the concept, that why we create those jeans. But of course you create jeans that recreates a pee stain. Of course it's a provocation, right? Mm-hmm. And to be honest, when the show came out, I was a bit disappointed about the fact that it didn't come out much there. Because I thought it was a kind of good idea at the time. Mm-hmm. But just because people didn't really see it. And then it exploded one day, out of the blue, 1.5 years later. People think that we did all this on purpose, but not even if you have the most incredible marketing agency behind you and all the million in the world can recreate a viral moment that they went. We haven't done nothing. We literally sit down and enjoy to see all this avalanche of what was going on.
This collection, was there anything in the making of or that ended up down the runway that you thought was provocative?
I think for me the provocation is more into the design of pieces. For me, maybe the most provocative piece of that collection is a bomber made out of wool from sheep that we acquire, and we're trying to keep alive this species of this breed of sheep in close to Tuscany. You know what I mean? Because that's what we have. We have a flock of sheep. We were trying to get our wool out of it, and now we're trying to do our knitwear with our own wool. Mm-hmm. And and for me to be able to have sheeps and to be able to create your own yarn and then to weave it, and instead of creating a nice little jumper, you create a proper London bomber jacket. I think that's what for me is more provocative. I don't need a provocation for provocation's sake. That's for me is provocative enough for who is gonna get it.
Do you think that conversation about the craft element, like talking about breeding your own sheep to have this specific kind of wool, do you think that ever gets put in the shadows versus the aesthetic bits?
There's so much of that detail within it, and it's so intrinsic to what we do, to finish things, to care about things, to be sustainable but not to shout about it, to be as ethical as possible, to think about a kind of cycle of production. All these things that people were talking about years ago, things that people talk about and shout about, but I just feel it's just intrinsic to what we do, and it's where we should be at.
And when we think about the details of this collection, what do you want the focus to be on? Well,
I think there was a big conversation. I mean, firstly, it's important to talk about what the kind of springboard for the idea for everything was. It was really about, we worked with Dominic Myatt on some balloons for the show, for some of the set of the show, and we were looking at this as a set piece. But I really liked, that was quite early on, and I really liked the idea. We really liked the idea of the balloon, especially at that time. I don't want to go into politics, but especially at that time last year, last autumn, and I think it became much more poignant to think about the balloon yes, it's kind of naive, and it's kind of juvenile and fun, and it has expression and joy, but actually more about a symbol of hope, and I think that's something that we really needed to cling on to at that time, and even now. But so that was the real starting point for us to think about this symbol of hope and what that means. Also, I mentioned before, we talk about time a lot, the kind of that time is something that we always come back to throughout the collections. The fact that, the past has already happened. It's something that we learnt in lockdown. The past is already gone. You can't change it, and I can't do shit about the future. So we might as well just try and celebrate ourselves right now. And that's why we always said that it's very self-referential, because I haven't got anything else other than what I have right now. So with the collections, are always a reflection of where we are at that time. So time, again, for us, but I think looking at time physically, looking at it, bringing it into a design piece. We're looking at kind of the continuum of fabric. We found this amazing fabric. We found this amazing lace. We used, I think it was 37 meters of continuous lace, just stitched together. It's spiraled. It's called the carousel of chaos dress. And I just like this idea that it's just continuing. It goes on, and it doesn't end.
And the pattern is amazing. It's just like a strip with darts, and the way it gets stitched creates a dress. I mean, it's one of my favorite pieces as well of the collection. But then you have some beautiful dresses that are all made with a dart, very simple down the front. And for example, this dress with the spiral of one strip. But and they go through so many layers of fittings and tests, and we work with amazing pattern cutters, and it's there is always something more than what you see, and I like that, and I don't care if you don't see it or no. I like to know that it's there for myself. So we always have those elements of construction.
Before I wrap up, I wanted to talk about gender a little, and how you define your JORDANLUCA man versus woman. Is there a clear dialogue there?
Yeah, I think there is a clear dialogue. I think it's interesting. A couple of years ago, a few seasons ago, we experimented with the idea of doing some genderless pieces and doing some genderless things, or no gender range of jerseys and suits and whatever. The thing is, I just got really bored by it. Not because of gender, but because of trying to do too many things for too many people. And I think the beauty, and I think the beauty of working with the binary is that you can really fuck with this weird clash in between. And I think JORDANLUCA is very much about, we talked about it before, but it's very much about this clash, this tension, and I think you need to know what the rules are here and know what the rules are here to be able to break and fuck with them, for sure. So of course JORDANLUCA is for everyone, every piece is for everybody, but I enjoy more working on the binary woman, what the binary woman is and what it looks like, and the binary man, and then whatever joy and whatever chaos happens in between. I love that as well.
And whatever life it has.
Absolutely. Rather than trying to create a kind of quite a square, because just physically, it's quite a square block. You're working with quite a square. There's no curves. There's no angle. You lose angles. You lose curves. It's quite difficult. I find it.
But this is the interesting thing that always happens in the show. Like we do suiting for man and suiting for woman. And then always, all the time, the man garments, they're going to end up on the girl, and the woman garment, they're going to end up on the boy.
I mean, even the heels here.
Always.
Even the heels, we wanted to do high heel boots for women, because of course that's what a woman needs, it's high heel boots. But of course, when we did the fittings, there's a something inside that I really want to see it on a guy, we want to try it on a guy.
It looked incredible, and the way that they looked on the guys, the kind of heels that we choose and stuff like that they're gonna redo them for the new collection as well. They were like, they made them so normal looking, and it was incredible to see how fresh everything looked with those shoes. And I think that's what Jordan's saying. We like to play with extreme binary in order to fuck about with them.
How did the Andreas cameo come about? Did you just ask?
Well, it's obviously Luca's relationship with him. Luca worked with him for
I asked when he was in a wedding. So I knew when to call him, and of course I worked with him for 8 years, and we're still in good relationships, and I thought that was the perfect collection to ask him. You know, it was a bit of an homage to London for us, that collection, and then I asked him and he said yes immediately, so it was very nice to have him. Yeah.